Hey, I hope all is awesome and you're having a beautiful, blessed evening. This is the evening before Thanksgiving, and I wanted to come on in here today and share some thoughts on being in Boundless Babe Society. Being in Boundless Babe Society. Um, on Monday, when I was coming home from therapy, I found out that Boundless Babe Society will cease to exist after 2025. So it's not going to continue within the new year. And I wanted to share some thoughts about how Boundless Babe Society has been so valuable in my life and how it's changed my life for good. And I know that that might sound corny because Wicked just came out, but it truly, truly has changed my life for good. Um, when I joined BBS in 2021, I was 39 and I was at a point in my life where I knew that I had to find out what being a wheelchair user was like as an adult, as an older adult. I was 21, no, 26 the last time I used a chair previously. And when I was 26, that was the year that I ended college. And I left college thinking, I don't want to be a wheelchair user anymore. And I need to go to therapy in order to do that, in order to not be a wheelchair user anymore. And not only did I not want to be a wheelchair user anymore, but I walked away from the community, from the disability community, which I was a part of in my younger years, in my teenage years to my 20s, but I walked away from it completely. And I just did not want anything to do with disability advocacy. That was something that I was not interested in because being disabled at that point, so I thought was weird, and I didn't want to be a weirdo. I was constantly being asked if I was going to therapy and if, quote unquote, the doctors could help me walk. And that got a little bit tiring. And as you guys know, or may not know, I don't know if people that are listening to this know my story, but for those of you who don't know, I lost my best friend when I was 21. She unexpectedly passed away on December 5th. And I'm sure that I must have got those comments like, why aren't you walking? And what happened to you? All of those intrusive comments that you get when my friend Noelle was alive. But when she passed away and I went into my grief, all of a sudden the comments just got louder and louder. And so I started listening to those comments, and that is what drove me to want to go to therapy and quote unquote become normal at that point. Which I thought normal was I would be able to walk long distances and look people eye to eye, and everything would be fine because they would consider me normal and everything would be good. Well, fast forward to 2020, I fall in a casino and a report is taken and I'm very embarrassed. But at that point, I'm like, maybe God is telling me that I do need to figure out what a life with a chair is as an adult. And so I, at that point, felt like I had nothing to lose. So I ordered my chair on Amazon. But I also, that summer, I ordered my chair on Amazon, but I also, that summer, um, found this event called Rolette's Experience online. It was online because of the pandemic. And so I decided to join it. I had heard of the Rolettes a long, long time ago in 2012 when they first started. And quite honestly, I could have entered their community as soon as they were starting and like at the inaugural point, if you will, if you want to call it that. But I was too embarrassed to be part of the community because I thought I would be some sort of miracle baby. And I do believe that God works miracles. But I also believe now, in my older age, that He has people in certain situations so He could work through them in certain ways. But fast forward to my first experience at RE, which was virtual, I was able to meet some fascinating, fascinating women that were unashamed of who they were, and those who were trying to figure it out, trying to figure out what this disabled life was like, were being guided and just being loved on in this sisterhood that was Rolette's Experience. And from then on, I was totally hooked. I'm like, I need to experience more of this. So I did some research, quote unquote research, on Google, and I found the Rolette's website. And on the Rolette's website, or maybe it was in an email, I'm not sure, I found that they had this program called Boundless Babe Society. And now what Boundless Babe Society is a dynamic program that brings together women from all over the world, all over the country and all over the world, to discuss different topics such as self-confidence, taking up space, communication, and I forgot some of the other ones, but I have so many favorites. And so being part of this community got me to a point where I am now unashamed. And another one that I forgot to mention was living unapologetically. Being unapologetically yourself. And that has to be my most favorite topic. That and taking up space are my most favorite topics, because those are the two things that I still have work to do with. And those are the two things that I tend to fall into my old ways a lot when I am out in the community. But I want to continue by saying that if it wasn't for RE and BBS, RE is still in existence, but BBS will not be. But if it wasn't for BBS, I wouldn't have had the courage in 2023 to answer a phone call that literally changed my life. I was so content at that point in 2023 being a wheelchair user and simply having dance as a part of my life. And that's great on its own. But what happened next was even more awesome. I was in a dance class. And by the way, I have to say that if you're hearing this right now, it might be a live rerun, what I like to call a live rerun, because I'm retelling stories that I have already told. But they have so much impact on me that I have to tell them again. I can't not tell these stories. So I was in a dance class at RE, and unbeknownst to me, I get a phone call from my local regional center, the one that I am a part of, the one that I am served by. And the woman on the other end of the phone says, "Hi, Marie, I'm calling from regional center, and you were recommended to me by your service coordinator. She told me that you would be a good candidate for our advocacy training. Would you like to join us? Please call me at your earliest convenience." So I got back from RE on a Sunday night, and the next Monday, the next day, I called the office, and that spot was still available. And that training, I got in. And that training that lasted 16 weeks changed my life. And I think I misquoted that it was 16 weeks. I think it was like only 8 or 9. But nonetheless, it changed my life. I fell in love with advocacy again. And I am now serving on the Lanterman Board of Directors, which I am very, very passionate about. But it wouldn't be without my mentors pushing me to do even the most simplest things, like go to coffee on my own and see how I felt being looked at. Because the reason why I didn't want to be a wheelchair user and I wanted to walk away from my existence as a disabled woman was that I didn't like the questions, and I didn't know how to put up with the looks. Even if it was just a simple look, I didn't know how to put up with it. So I'm like, no, that's not me. I need to go to therapy. And I fought my mentors on this for the longest time. But I also did what they told me. And I went to coffee for once a week for a while. I think it was about a year and a half. And I got used to being looked at and doing simple things like ordering coffee and not being ashamed of taking up space, like literally, physically taking up space. I will say that that lesson is something I still need to work on, because from time to time I still catch myself saying sorry instead of excuse me when it comes to getting by somewhere, or when it comes to making another person wait just because I'm a little slower getting my money out of my purse. And Nikki and Renee, who were my mentors, they really taught me that even though we are wheelchair users, we deserve to be considered respected, or we deserve to be respected, not considered respected, but we deserve to be ultimately respected, and we deserve to take up space and exist the way we want and be unapologetically ourselves. The only thing we should be apologizing for is if we actually do something that affects somebody else in a negative way. And purely existing in a space, whichever space you're in, is not something a person should be apologizing for. So throughout BBS, I have just learned how to embrace my womanhood as a disabled woman. I remember, I think it was probably 2 years ago now, I went to my first concert in my chair. Um, it was my friends Nick and Desi. They are Broadway performers, and they were performing at a bar called what was it called? Oh, they were performing in Hollywood at a bar called the Bourbon Room. And I rolled in there with my chair, and I did not, it was the first time in my life that I did not feel weird. Rolling into a space that was public and not a family event, and and that people could see that I was in my chair. And I bring that up specifically because my friend Nick is in Jersey Boys, or was in Jersey Boys previously, and that's how we met. But I remember this one time where we were going to a venue to see Jersey Boys that was not a local place that we usually frequented, so we didn't know the accessibility of it. And I had to use my grandma's chair because my grandmother's wheelchair, which was a transport chair, was the only wheelchair that we had in the car, because I unabashedly insisted that my mom and dad put my wheelchair that I had used since high school, and then I had used in my 20s, in my grandmother's garage, and I didn't want to see it anymore. So we go to San Diego, and I make my mom take my walker because I wanted to look, again, normal and what I thought was pretty. I only thought I was pretty if I was on my feet. And that sounds very Nessa Rose of me. I know it sounds weird, but I think it sounds weird. That is why I'm saying it sounds weird, because I am owning that it does sound, to me, very, very weird. But it is something that happens to people, even and especially in real life. When you don't feel like you look your best because you're being looked at as a different way, literally in a different piece of equipment. It's just an uncomfortable feeling at first if you're not used to it. But once you get used to it, you realize, and again, I'm going to say something that is very much truth, but could sound very weird to others, is that when you get used to it, you realize that your disability and your equipment is actually your freedom. Because you could do more with the proper equipment than you can with the things usually that people expect you to use or people expect you to do. So I told that story at my BBS graduation in 2022. The program was a year long, the initial program. But then in 2023, they created the Graduate Connect program, which brought all of us graduates back. And in the Graduate Connect program, you're basically connecting with those women who are taking the program at the initial time. The only thing that was different about the Graduate Connect program was that we didn't have mentors. But I feel very blessed and lucky that I have kept in touch with both of my mentors, and I tell them every single chance I get that they are my Glindas. I'm very much a theater person, a theater lover, and Wicked is my favorite musical, if not one of my favorite musicals. It has to be at the tippy top. Um, and I just am now embracing everything that my mentors have taught me. And I am so grateful for this program, you guys. I don't know, and I know, actually I do know that I would not be the woman that I am today without this program. I would not have had the gusto and the courage to take the steps that I have taken. And I just love my mentors so much, and I love my BBS sisters so much, and I know that for a lot of us, we are going to keep in touch through the magic of social media, and that we are going to stay in each other's lives. And I just want to say that I am so, so grateful that BBS changed my life, and that Rolex experience will continue, hopefully, in the future to change other people's lives and other women's lives, and that they would come away feeling empowered and like they're in a sisterhood. You guys, thank you so much for listening. I love you guys. And again, everything that I'm doing, including keeping up this podcast and all of my advocacy that I'm doing, is because of BBS, because they have encouraged me to embrace who I am and not be ashamed of it. I'll talk to you guys later. I love you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.